Hello and welcome to Asterix and the Gladiator with Hissy and Scummer today. Just before we get started, hello to Crit, Jen, and Ring there in the chat, and Scummer as well. Obviously, you're right next to me, so you know this. I mean,
Yeah,
screen wise, obviously.
yeah.
Um, so, and also welcome to anyone who's watching this in the future, because I've been told that's a useful thing to say, and you are more than welcome to catch up with us later. Strongly recommend it. So now we're all ready, and you had your half an hour warning to bring your food and drink with you for this one. I'm going to hand over to Scummer to do a little bit of his own introduction there.
Okay, well, this is the fourth book in the Asterix series, Asterix the Gladiator. We're going to see, we'll actually see our two heroes, Asterix and Obelix, go all the way to Rome today and actually take part in the games. So, but I feel right at the beginning, there's a huge elephant in the room that we're going to have to address with this. And yeah, and I got to say, it's one of those things that maybe to me, going back through some of these books now, I mean, when I think I may have, when I started this series, I may have been looking back with rose tinted glasses a little bit with some of them. And um, we did touch last week on that there were some pretty unflattering depictions of the Germans in last week's one. Now, one thing I'd forgotten, and I was kind of very harshly reminded of this week, is actually how, quite frankly, fucking awful some of the depictions of black people in these comics are. So I've got to warn you, there might be, this is a bit of a trigger warning in advance, but I feel this is something, we're going to have to address. And I'll say, I don't know what you'd like to say on this, Hissy. So
Yeah, so we are going to address it and we are not going to hand wave it because this is blatantly racist
mm,
in certain ways. And I know this is meant to be a fun stream, but we can't hand wave things like that. Last week, he was punching up. He was a Frenchman punching up at the Germans. And therefore, it was almost acceptable given his context. This week, he is punching down and he is punching down hard. Now, we're going to have to show it eventually. Now, I'm going to give a trigger warning, and I will give sort of a 3 or 4 second warning every time we show a panel that has anything like this on it throughout the stream,
mm,
just for anyone who it might affect to brace themselves. But this is the kind of thing we're talking about. If you
mm,
have a look at the depiction of the Black Gladiator there, this is on the front cover of this book, and this is toned down compared to what is in the book.
mm.
So please be very aware that this is a comic strip from the 60s and it's French. Now, that's nothing against the French. I'm sure they're all lovely people, great wine, all the rest of it. But there is a specific historical context to why the French were possibly, I don't want to say are, but quite possibly are, so blatantly racist and seemingly behind the rest of Europe. I'm not going to go into it. It would take far too long, and it's not my area of expertise. I don't want to cock it up,
Yeah.
quite frankly. But they were one of the sort of, if you want to talk about the big 3 or 4 empires that were involved in the transatlantic slave trade, you've got Britain, France, Spain, and Portugal.
Mm.
France was easily and above the possibly even the biggest, I would say. You've still got islands in the Caribbean whose main language is French, who are still, marking major events where there were rebellions against the French, and it had an impact on the national psyche as a whole in France, to the extent that
Yeah.
some of them probably don't even realize the impact it had. And looking at it as an outsider, you have to have an
Yeah.
understanding of that in order
Yeah.
to, it will still stick in your throat when you see things like this, but you have to understand it's a very specific mindset that those of us who weren't born and raised in France are never going to understand. And you have to admit as well, on top of that, this is going on for what, 80 years old now? 70 years old?
60s, I think this would have been written early to mid 60s. I mean, it still, to me, doesn't, because I still think, even by the standards of the time, it's bad. You know, it's especially bad now, but it's not good at all. I mean, and as I said, there are historical context. That's not an excuse for it at all.
It's not at all, but it does explain it a little bit.
We want to be clear that's not an excuse for it. I mean, I'm going to post a link in the live chat, which is a New York Times article about. Actually, I can't, because you haven't registered me. But
there was an article you shared to me. I think it was in the Guardian. I've marked it as the Guardian. It might not be, but it is in the description below about how to read a racist book to your children, or at the very least starting a discussion.
Okay, so it's in the description already, so I don't need to post it in the chat. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously because I don't feel we shouldn't ignore these things. I mean, it'd be very easy to try and skip over these panels and like pretend it's not there, but I think that would be dishonest to do so. And as I said, there is a whole context to a lot of the comic books in Europe, and also not just the Asterix, but certainly the Tintin books as well, which were Belgian. And Belgium's got its own really horrific history with colonialism and racism, and obviously French colonialism. I mean, we could talk about something like the Haitian Revolution or something at another time, but there is a
context for it. And I would say as well, you have to understand, this comic was released, I've just checked, in 1962.
Yeah.
Kennedy's still in the White House. It's the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Civil rights in America is not a thing that is happening yet.
Yeah.
This is well, it is, but it's on a small scale. It's not exploded into what it would become. Martin Luther King is not stood preaching about his dream at this point. This is not something that's happening right now. So we're talking about that pre-civil rights era level of racism. But even for that, I mean, the depictions of this, for me, remind me of a particular Jam Jar character who is very well known in the UK for being...
I was actually going to mention him because I'm of an age where I can actually remember the character. I don't know if you want me to refer to what he was called, but I know
if you call it by the full name, we can honestly say that you're calling the character. I would rather you didn't use a shortened version.
Yeah. There was a character that was used to sell marmalades in the UK. I'm of an age where I can remember the dolls of this character, and it's this is the kind of time we're at and about, that it was again a blatantly racist.
For those who actually maybe don't know what we're talking about, I'm going to say the name of it once and not again. This was known as the Gollywog or the Golly. And the shortened version of it became a racist slur in the UK. I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but it is a racist slur in the UK, so I'm not going to repeat it or shorten it in any way. But it was very much this depiction. It was a black person with white teeth and bright red lips and white eyes. And it was almost a negative, and I mean negative in the sense of photography and film, image of a clown. It is the only sort of way I can describe it. If you want to Google it, the first few hits on it are just images of it and articles showing that it is racist and discussing why it's racist. So if you want to look it up, you are welcome to do so after this stream, obviously. Don't go losing as viewers. But it is there and it is a thing.
Okay. I mean, if you feel we've covered that
Yeah,
enough,
we've given it a good 10 minutes, and we had to do it.
yeah.
Let's get on with the story now.
Because we want these to be fun streams, but
Yeah.
when there's elephants in the room like this, we can't ignore it and brush it off. It has to be addressed. And it's like one of those things. Do you brush these things off? Do you try to ignore they're there, or do you confront these things and try to learn from it? I do encourage anyone to go and read the article we put in the chat, and obviously if this in future streams when this comes up, because we don't want to go through this whole thing every time we do one of these streams and come back. We'll probably be in future streams referring people back to this if they want to get our take on this. So
yeah.
Okay, so I think we've covered that now, haven't we?
Yeah. And again, trigger warning for this first panel, which kind of says everything you need to know. A day in the life of the Romans, although I should point out, this isn't a hissy fit, seriously, hissy fit here. This is not historically accurate. The Romans did not have slavery based on race. This is not a historically accurate depiction. Race-based slavery is a very modern idea. Slavery in Rome was based on things like poverty, debt, a criminal history, whether you were the descendant of someone who'd lost a war to the Romans, or whether you had lost a war to the Romans.
Yeah.
It was not race based.
I mean, yeah. There's no. I mean, obviously they did. Slaves were taken from conquered people, obviously, but it wasn't. It's for lack of a better term, it was almost an equal opportunity slavery, form of slavery.
The thing is, with slavery, it wasn't permanent, and also you could just as easily be a senator as a slave and end up going from, not necessarily from slave to senator, but definitely from senator to slave, if you got into debts you couldn't repay. It was no different than, anyone in modernity. It's the equivalent of having bailiffs knocking on your door. It's kind of their answer to debt collection a lot of the time. It's their answer to petty criminality. And the slavery wasn't the slavery we associate with it. Although the Romans did have these kind of things, more women that were carried in this way, and royalty. And just looking at that bloke, I'm not being funny, that wouldn't have held him, and he'd need more than 4 slaves to lift him. But that's just me. But yeah, anyway.
So we got this. So to give the context to this, we've got you've got this guy's been called as the prefect of Gaul, although I think they'd have probably had if being a province, it would have had a governor rather than a prefect. But that's just that's a nitpicky little point. But he's come to one of the Roman camps outside the Gaulish village, and he's one of the things he's about mentioning that he's come out here to get a gift for Julius Caesar. Wants to bring him something back nice. So they suggested a Gaulish slave or something, or one of these invincible Gauls that they've heard so much about, I think. So I'm just summarising at the moment.
Yeah, and I am showing the discussion that happened just here so you can all see it. And then they decide, in their wisdom, the Romans, there's one who's a bit more harmless than the others, Cacophonix the Bard.
Yeah.
Which I don't intend to show the entire thing, and I have no intention of showing it all. I'm just looking for certain panels.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. So in the forest now we get typical
grumbling soldiers here.
Yeah, quite typical there. Which is a nice bit of fun.
I mean, this happens a lot when in these books you get, these grumbling Roman soldiers. I mean, the classic one is like, join the army. They said it's a man's life. They said they didn't say nothing about doing. That you get this a lot throughout. There's
You do.
a lot of jokes in this about being like the Roman soldiers, sort of like being the like the grumbling, moaning, sort of moaning about what they got to do at times, and
Yeah.
so
And I do love the musical puns with cacophonics in this one. There's quite a few.
yeah.
This is the first such example. So this is a lot of the songs are quite instantly recognizable, but when boars are running away with Romans on top of them, you've got to presume he's not the best singer in the world.
No, I mean, yeah. But this is, as I said, with this character, in his own mind, he is a brilliant artist, and it's just all these barbarians are all these barbaric Philistines that he's around just do not appreciate his genius and how great he is. So in his own mind, he thinks he is an absolutely wonderful singer. But the truth is, he's awful, but he's just so completely unaware of how bad he actually is.
I do want to point out the historical joke here. These secret weapons ought to be banned by the Helvetia Convention.
Oh, I love that.
I love this one because, in case you're not aware, Helvetia is the female personification of Switzerland, where Geneva is.
Yeah. Well, one of the tribes that first actually launched the Gallic Wars, who were migrating. Without going too much into the history of it, because it's too long to cover this, but one of the first tribes that Caesar had a war with was the Helvetii, who were migrating into I think it's Cisalpine Gaul, I think, but again, that's a whole nother bit of history for another time, I think. But
yeah. So there's that, and then
so they find the druid here. So which one have we got here?
This one just amuses me. So they found the bard, but now they've got to find a way to work out his singing, and as usual, chaos ensues. This is what happens when soldiers can't hear their orders.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do. So here we go, and I like this one. I'm only a bard in a gilded cage.
Yeah.
And then
so he gets
and they've got him.
It gets bashed over the head. They've got him, and they take him back, and he's going to be eventually a present for Julius Caesar. But the young little Gaulish boy here sees what's going on. Is going to run back to the village to inform them that Cacophonix has been taken by the Romans.
Yeah.
And
so he's quite cute.
Yeah.
I think he appeared in the last one learning maths from Cacophonix.
Yes. I think he's actually given a name in this one, actually. It says somewhere, but I forget what it was.
Let's have a look. Pick and Mix, yes. Pick and Mix, this is our little Pick and Mix. Whose name is as cute as he is.
Yeah. I'll say. I mean, I'm going to give a teaser for next week because we're going to get introduced into another recurring character that's a very cute little character as of next week as well. So there's a teaser for next week.
Yeah. So we've got. I like this Obelix Quarry. Many is turning.
Yeah.
So this one. Yeah. It is the little visual puns that make this comic strip so good.
Yeah.
It really
what
is.
I like about that panel as well is that it almost shows that they've been told that Cacophonix has been kidnapped, and it's like they don't. It is the thing, they don't like Cacophonix. They don't, they probably in a way sort of sooner he did bugger off. But the fact that the Romans had taken him was like, he's still one of us, and that's still a slap in the face. We can't let
this one.
It's kind of almost like it's kind of like almost the dude, isn't it? This aggression will not stand.
Yeah, it's these two. I think when they're talking to the chief.
Yeah.
When they're talking to vital statistics, this one amuses me. It's not so much. Again, as you said, it's not that Cacophonix is particularly liked or wanted, but he's one of us, and you do not steal one of our people.
He's like he's a pain in the ass, but he's our pain in the ass.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah. So off they go, and they get to the point where I do like that. This is the one where nearly all of them are given the potion, and they're shown, and it's not just Asterix who's giving it. And this is I love this image. Poor Obelix, always hopeful.
Does this every single time he does this. He gets in the queue and is told time and time again, no, you're not having any more because I'm worried about side effects. You don't need any more. And the way he says, oh, go on, I'll give you this nice menhir in one of the panels. He's literally just handing him this, and it's like he doesn't.
Obelix, you're the only person who can lift that.
Yeah.
Vitus, this one I quite liked. Friends, Gauls, countrymen, we must give these Romans a good lesson.
Yeah.
And of course, anyone who understands that there is a very similar speech going on in Rome.
Yes.
Which is quite amusing. I do like that there's a bit, and I'm going to try and scroll it so you can see them. We have nothing to fear but the sky falling on our heads.
Yes.
And then we have a nice little cut scene to the Roman village. The Roman barracks. We were aware now that an attack is. We have nothing to fear but the Gauls. But it's the Gauls we're fighting. And you can kind of see the way it's been drawn. Some of the soldiers are actually looking at each other as if to say, is he off his head? Yeah. What's he on?
This is what I mean. The Romans that are stationed near this Gaulish village know better. You get the occasional one when you get a new story where you get a new garrison coming and they're all like, they're all raring to go and fight these Gauls, and then soon learn the hard way. And then they're like, no, we know better.
Okay, so we've got them. They're all getting ready to. They're all maneuvering into place, and then in come the Gauls. So they're getting ready to fight, and we can't. The Gauls are in the way. Which is just, you know what they say about the best laid plans and the enemy.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I don't actually. The reason I'm scrolling through so quickly in parts of it is because I don't want to hit a copyright anything.
Yeah, and as well, we are obviously got to be a little bit conscious of time because we want to make sure we're off in time for One Ring can do his stream later as well. So on time.
So Asterix and Obelix had a bit of a bet going on about who could steal the most Roman helmets.
Yes,
which is, I don't know. I feel like this came first, but it reminded me of Inglorious.
Yeah.
You owe me 1,000 Nazi scalps. Well, apparently Obelix thinks he owes someone like 1,000,000 Roman helmets.
Yeah. This is going to be a little recurring thing throughout this book. Actually, this particular joke. So, they find out. But they find out that it's a little too late, and Cacophonix has already been taken to Rome. And it's just
because I know we have at least one military veteran in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm going to point this out. Notice how our general here is more interested in untidiness
Yeah.
and covering it up than anything else.
Like, this camp's an utter shambles, sweep, sort it out,
And yes, Ring, as for
Yeah.
Obelix and Asterix and the helmets, that's
They are,
that's another
yeah,
one.
very, that they are almost a bit like that in a certain way. I mean, Obelix is clearly Gimli, let's be honest. So,
So yeah. Cool. And then I do hope you're enjoying our banners, by the way, as well. These Romans are just a little bit crazy. So, which I'm sure someone will point out at some point in this story.
hello, Badger.
Teaser. Hi, Badger. So we've got, he's now on the Roman Galley, and again, trigger warning for this page. I know it's there somewhere.
It's coming up, just so
It is coming up
somewhere. So just be warned.
Yeah. So there is one joke here. The slaves in the galley again, Roman slavery, galley slaves. It was one of the hardest Roman forms of Roman slavery. But this one, I will sing a song to liven them up, says Cacophonix, and they start rowing faster.
Yeah. I love the way they're doing the pun of farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain, or whatever. Substitute it for Celtic and Gaulish.
Yeah. So you can see how bad he is by
Well, I love that the slave saying, "Our work isn't all fun and games, but this is inhuman."
Yeah. So that's where we are there, and then
he's starting to wonder if he's got the right thing here, is whether this is the great gift for Caesar or not. But so anyway, of course, a rescue mission's got to take part. We've got to get Cacophonix back, and who else is going to go after them? It's Asterix and Obelix, of course. Who else?
I do like this one here.
Yeah.
He recruits the old man in the village and says, "You needn't deliver more than one at a time to start with."
Now, I don't think he's given a name yet, but that character's got a name. It'll be a sort of recurring character. He's Geriatrix, the oldest man in the village.
This one as well. This is a great historical joke. Off the trot with the words, "Don't worry, if the Romans aren't nice to us, we'll leave their city full of ruins." Wow.
Yeah.
This amused me on so many levels, and I'm sure it will amuse anyone else who has even a passing interest in Roman history. So I'm going to let that one stand. That doesn't need explaining. I'm just going to let that stand.
Yeah, I don't think we need to really explain that joke. But
yeah, and then there's a nice one here. This one more for the kids. What's the Latin for wild boar? Says Obelix. Always thinking about his stomach, of course. So that one's
which basically roughly translates, it means one pig. Now we're going to have to find out what the Latin for math pig is now. So
yeah, we'll have to do that at some point.
Yeah.
So off they go, waiting for a ship. And Obelix doesn't want to catch it because he's too busy eating. He wants his bet.
Yeah.
I do like this one. And it's not scanned very well, but you can just make it out. Asterix and Obelix make the ancient Gaulish sign indicating a wish to be taken on board. Note the 4 clenched fingers and thumb jerked in the desired direction. If you wish to go to Rome, the direction of the thumb is immaterial, since all roads lead there. This gesture is still employed today, though not often on ships. I'm sure we've all spotted someone thumbing on the side of the road at some point.
Yeah. So, lo and behold, this is a Phoenician merchant that then picks them up to take them to Rome. And one of the things that comes up next is one of my favourite little jokes in this whole particular book.
Yeah, the PLC joke, yeah.
Yes.
Or the name of the merchant, which
The
I
name
quite
of
like.
yes. What's it?
Economic crisis.
Yeah.
Nice and amusing. This one, I'm sure we've all worked for a PLC at some point, but
Yeah.
this joke. When we floated the company, I drew up the contract and they failed to read it carefully before signing. I'm chairman and managing director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's anyone who's worked for a company where they're sort of saying, no, you're not employees. You're part of our family, or you're our colleagues, you're our partners. Anyone who's been through that would get that. But it's like, you're still a blooming wage slave, really.
Yeah. That's the wave slave joke. But then of course you have you can kind of tell that the guy who wrote this, again, it's another very French thing. These people are very, I mean, towards their left wing, to the Americans in the room, I can only imagine you think they're even more left wing. But the willingness to strike in a crisis,
Yeah.
I quite like it. I quite respect it. Our contract doesn't say we have to fight. This is a work to rule joke for anyone who's not aware of it. It's an idea that when you're unionized and when you're trying to get your employer to do something they should be doing, you work to rule. You work exactly to the clock. You down tools, and exactly, you finish at 5. You finish at 5. Doesn't matter. And you do only what your job description says. It's kind of the weaponization of the concept of being a bit of a job's worth.
Yeah.
Which is quite fun. So here we are, and they need a union rep. This is all I can say. Look at this, all of them. So off we go. And again, we get like half a page of, or a page and a half of fighting the pirates.
Yes. Now, I think this is the first time we come across these pirates in since we've been covering these, but they're gonna kind of become a bit of a recurring theme in these books, that they pop up from time to time, and they generally doesn't end too good for them.
And the nice little punny at the end here after the battle. He was going to sell them as slaves in Rome, but now he's going to take them there as thanks for getting rid of the pirates. And we have this wonderful. Do you want to read that? Because that's brilliant. The sheer level of pun in this one.
Oh, what's this? Right. You certainly.
It is on screen if you want it.
Yeah. Sorry. You certainly do have a business acumen. Well, what can you expect? As I was saying to my partners, we're all in the same boat, and we mustn't rest on our oars. If overheads are not to make us go under. Love it. I love it.
Yeah. Typical.
I love the whole. It's like but it's that whole blooming we. It's like, no, hold on. Who's doing the fucking work here? Come on.
Yeah, come on.
Who's doing the? So it's classic. They're doing the work. He's getting rich. This is pure out like capitalism, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And he does that a fair bit in this one. There's quite a few very working class jokes in this story. But again, an amusingly named Roman. We now find out our prefect of Gaul is named Odious Asparagus.
Okay.
Yeah. And Caesar is not quite as amused as we thought he would be.
Yeah.
Throw him to the lions. I want to comment on this. Now, I know we have a lot of atheists in the stream, at least one, and quite a few in the audience, and I'm sure there's several more who will listen in later on. Caesar says, throw the bard to the lions at the next games. Take him away. This is probably more historically accurate than anything else you've ever heard. It's just a death sentence. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It wasn't something specific to Christians or any other religious minority, and it wasn't.
It was generally people declared criminals in a way. I think a lot of the time, rather than I mean, if you think about it, it's what's it been like? A couple of hundred, maybe less than 200 years that we still had public hangings in Britain as and they were a form of entertainment, and people and Pete. So just to let people know, whatever you might think of me at times, yes, being a football fan means we've come quite some time way since then.
Not really. Have you seen how violent some of those games get?
Well, yeah, I know, but
you're probably not as far away as you think from it if you look at some football and rugby matches. Do want to quickly shill. Ring and I will be picking up the Story Keepers at some point. So, and you've already seen me rant once about this and it not just being Christians. You'll probably get way more of it there. So Ring is in the chat, and I'm sure he'll be willing to drop himself a link to his channel if you want to go subscribe to him.
Yeah. And obviously once we're finished, head over to his stream. So
yeah. So let's have a look at this. And I wanted to point that out because that, as a historian, that makes my heart happy that it's accurate.
Yeah.
And actually, the drawing of the ships is as close to accurate as I'd expect a comic strip to get. Single mast. I can never pronounce it, but it basically means 3 layers, 3 sets of oars. You wouldn't expect him to draw it.
Trireme. Yeah, trireme. I was guessing that, but I thought that was more a Greek thing. But yeah, I think that's.
Well, the Romans, the history of the trireme's an interesting one. During the, I want to say, first path. There was a war. There was a war, as there usually is with the Romans. They essentially stole a Carthaginian ship, and when they took it apart, they found out it was basically IKEA.
Yeah,
it was IKEA'd, and they recreated it. Yeah, flat pack.
And this is the first Punic War, I think you're thinking of.
Yeah, first Punic War. That's the one. Sorry, when you study it for so long, eventually all the wars just run into one, and you lose track.
Yeah.
It is quite. It's one of those things. So let's have a look at this.
Move on here, and obviously now Asterix and Obelix arrive in Rome. Again, tiny little visual puns like they're walking down the road, dangerous, slippery flagstones.
Yeah. The roads are so wide and straight. What must it be like in Rome?
Yeah.
And the Via Appia is the main road in and out of Rome, or would have been at this time, which is nice. And then there's this. Now, country boys in the city, much. Imagine the culture shock you'd get walking into that.
Yeah.
It's not a bad representation of what Rome would have been like back in the day. Probably wouldn't have been as white or as clean as that.
No.
And I mean that both in the buildings would have been painted and the ground would have been covered in filth.
There's quite a big Hollywood misconception, actually, as well. You see a lot of these sort of historical epics, whether it be anything like, from Gladiator, or especially back to the sort of 50s, things like, Cleopatra, any of those big epics. You've got all these pristine white marble buildings. And actually, no, the buildings were painted and decorated. They were not all black and white at all.
Yeah, no, they were. I mean, they were borderline garish in some parts. If you've ever seen pictures of Pompeii and the villas at Pompeii, the inside of them, there's not a white spot on it. And it was all like that. There's an academic argument, debate, discussion going on at the moment about how attached some historians are to the concept of white marble statues and how that plays into race-based biases. There's a lot of it, but there were colours, and it was a very colourful scene. But this is the cutting edge of classical research. This was only found in the last 10 or 15 years. They found microscopic specks of paint on marble statues and things, and managed to sort of reverse engineer it into an idea of what it looks like.
So of course you're in the. So of course, they're in there. So they arrive in Rome. First thing they find is a ghoulish restaurant right here in Rome. You know, and of course it comes out the classic wild boar eventually comes out. But so they meet this guy who's they meet this ghoul. I'm trying to sort of skip through a bit, but
instant mix.
Yeah.
I love this idea that he's opened a Gaulish restaurant in Rome, so he's going to open a Roman, a Roman restaurant in Gaul.
Yeah,
this guy's got the monopoly on foreign cuisine, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's like he's going to do open Roman restaurant in Letitia, which we covered a couple of weeks ago. Is modern day would be Paris now. So
I like this. Come and see me this evening. I put the address into one of the bars. Whoops, you didn't. You should have said that before Obelix saw it.
Yeah, he's like that boar's going to last seconds if an Obelix is around. So they go into. So they head off to the old Roman baths.
This I think Obelix's confusion amuses me for this.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't understand why you go to a room to sweat, and then there's just a lot of He just doesn't get it at all. And we meet Fatuous, who is on the lookout for gladiators.
Yes. And we also have come to find out he's kind of got cacophonics later as well. So
so he's introduced himself as their guide, and this one dives into the pool of icy water, and off Obelix goes, and no more water.
Yeah.
Whoops. Right.
And trigger warning coming up.
Yeah, trigger warning coming up. Apologies if anyone saw that as I scrolled down.
We did
slaves. There were slaves in the Roman baths. They probably didn't look anything like this. I'm hard pressed to find any human being who looks anything like this in history.
Yeah. If you just joined us at all, we did spend about 10 minutes at the beginning of the stream talking about some of these depictions which are problematic. So
incredibly so.
It has been addressed.
It has been addressed, and I would strongly recommend, if you have just joined us, go back and watch the first 10 minutes when we're done, and you'll see us go into quite some depth on it. But you do see how it's quite obvious the cover has been toned down compared to what's actually in the comic itself.
Yes.
Which has its own issues, I think. He beats up the masseur, which, the guy was... If anyone's ever had a massage, I think we can all... Yeah, the masseur can be quite mean. It works.
It works, but if you like, this is supposed to be relaxing, and you're ripping my body to shreds.
Yeah. This concept of an insulet, these things existed. And it's basically an apartment block.
Yes.
And the following couple of pages, I am going to preempt with, I live in an apartment block. It's almost like this. I think 20 years ago it might have been. But, most people, when there's noise, believe me. And it does very much ring like reading, almost feels like sort of a Rising Damp-esque style of comedy that we get in this. You get your stereotypical... I mean, that's a council house mum in a toga. I'm sorry, it just is.
Oh, totally. It totally
Um,
is. Um,
and then this one here,
yeah.
the guy who works nights, probably a bachelor.
I mean, effectively, these people that probably don't realise that these are, not probably, you necessarily quite call them high rises, but they did have like multiple story like apartment
Hmm.
blocks in Rome. But I think one of the interesting things, and you think about these, like sort of well, not so much work council estate high rises, but these things that these like luxury apartment complexes or whatever, where the people with the most money tend to buy the ones near the top. In Rome, it was actually the people with the money. They tended to live down on the bottom levels.
Yeah,
Took them less time to. It's like you're poorer. No, you've got to walk. You've got to walk further to get down to the
yeah.
street level. Okay.
And there would have been less light, and there's no indoor plumbing. So, you've got to go further if you wake up in the middle of the night and you need the toilet.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. But also, there was a lot of. This is shown very much as a housing complex. That's not what the insula was. Especially as you got to the top tiers, your insula, where you lived, you only went there to sleep. You didn't do anything else there. You didn't have a
Yeah.
kitchen. You didn't have a cooker. You didn't have any means to entertainment or anything like that. This was your sleeping place. And you would easily fit 8 or 10 people in a room. And
Yeah.
you just lay there. More like a barracks room than anything else. You might not even have a bed. You'd be lucky if you had a bit of straw on the top levels. One of the great stories is technically it was illegal to throw your waste out the window if you had a bucket on the top floor. Of course, 2 o'clock in the morning, do you care about the law when you're that tired?
Yeah.
And humans are humans. And one of the great ones is, I think it was Cassius, although this is off the top of my head. It may have been someone else. It might have either been Juvenal or Marshall, who the comment was passed, you don't walk around Rome in the daytime because you don't know what's coming from above. And you stay out of those areas for that reason. But these buildings were very, to me, they're almost workhouse-esque. And there are some beautiful ruins of what will give you an idea of what Insula looks like right opposite the Termini station in Rome. There's also some nice ones at Ostia Antica.
Yeah.
So this one I like. Obelix is looking around, and this joke here, which I will let you explain, Scummer, as it's more your area than mine.
Oh, which one? Down the
Great Aladdin Council.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just be back. I've lost.
I've got it up on screen, so if you want to have a look.
Oh, like that's a GLC. Yeah, that is a very I mean, probably a bit of a dated ref, but that used to be the GLC used to be the Greater London Council. It was abolished in the 1980s at one time. But it was the sort of it was almost like slightly autonomous little government in London in a way during one time. But yeah, but probably one of the most famous things that ever happened with the GLC is the Livingston coup in about 1980 or 82, I think it was. But so that was quite a famous.
I would like to also take a moment. The translation of the jokes. There is no way that joke landed in France.
No.
So that had to have been something totally different in the original French.
That's a purely British joke, that one.
So I've no idea what it was in the original French, but obviously the translator had some fun with that. So let's see. And as usual, you go to the local apartment complex and you will find all the gossip.
Yeah. Do you know what I've just noticed? There's a slight difference in the artwork on mine and yours. That this character here's got like red hair and he's got white hair in mine. so there have been some obviously updates, which but
Yeah.
with colours and that. But
I do apologise as well at the slightly blurry edges of mine. My scanner's not the best, but this is better than us trying to hold pictures up and things.
yeah,
So we're getting there slowly, week by week. This I love this. This is just, you can just see it, can't you? It's so universal.
Yeah.
A person from upstairs, you act the fine lady, but you don't have a slave to do your housework. In other words, your place is filthy. Tidy up.
Yeah.
And shut up or I'm calling the police. And then we have, and I am going to zoom right in on this because I love this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please note what's going across the bottom of our screen as well. This is practically Obelix's catchphrase, quite frankly. If anything is, these Romans are crazy.
And it does. It's incredibly amusing, isn't it? And just to point out, because apparently we didn't say it out loud, but yes, obviously elevators weren't invented when the Romans had insula. So that's a nice little. And again, I do strongly recommend anyone who's watching these, do get the books and read them yourselves. A lot of them available online. A lot of them now becoming available on Kindle format or on electronic format.
Yeah. I am actually reading this on Kindle, so they're quite affordable.
Yeah. So they are there, and then I like this one. Don't touch them, shake them. It lasts longer that way.
Yeah.
And then we see the first image of
the circus.
The circus. Which is not bad.
It's not bad. I'm very glad that they. Although, I mean, I'm very glad that they actually got something right with this. So they do refer to the circus as being the Circus Maximus because the Colosseum was not built in Julius Caesar's time. Just so people know.
Yeah.
It's good 100 years later at least.
Yeah, and the Colosseum was the Flavian amphitheater.
Yeah.
Is what it would have been known as in its time. Colosseum is definitely, to call it a Colosseum before about the 1500s.
It may have been
an anachronism.
It may have been a bit of a nickname or something for it during the Roman period because it actually stood on the site of Emperor Nero's private lake, and he also had a statue of himself as the sun god, as a colossus statue. So it's it's a big giant statue, and so part of obviously building what would be the Colosseum is part of that was trying to eradicate the sort of memory of Nero at the time, and it was also very good sort of politics by the new Flavian dynasty.
The Flavians were very good at that.
The Colosseum was their gift to Rome, but I think it picked up that nickname because of its their foot being a colossus, a statue of depicting Nero as a god.
Yeah, not the best when there's the guy he wasn't the fiddler on the roof. Let's put that one to bed right now.
Yeah.
But he wasn't the greatest of political minds either.
No.
I mean, to pass the comment when half your city's gone up in flames. Oh, now I can build a palace and live like a human being. You've got to be a little bit. We'll be kind and we'll say that he wasn't politically astute.
Yeah, well, I think it's all I say about Nero is when you get a 16-year-old kid from a really, really messed up family and make him the most powerful man on the face of the world, I think you're asking for trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So
also, I am gonna just go back because these Romans are crazy. I'm not sure if anyone's aware. These Romans are crazy is actually a Latin pun. Are you aware of this, Geoff?
No, go. Please enlighten me.
So I need to get the notes up because this is something I need to explain it properly. And it's a pun on SPQR, which is
Oh yes, you did actually tell me this now. Yes.
Yeah.
So Senate and people of Rome, right? That which roughly that means, but
yeah. So that's what that means roughly. Now the in Italian, to say these Romans are crazy, and please forgive my horrendous Italian. Sono pazzi questi Romani.
yeah.
These Romans are crazy, and it's the same abbreviation. So it's one of those. Romans do like to take the mickey out of themselves a little bit. I have noticed this, like when I visited, they do take the mickey out of themselves a little bit. They don't take themselves too seriously at all. It's a bit difficult for them to do that with their culture. But they amuse me because they take something very that it's hard. It's still printed on the manhole covers and things in Rome.
Yeah.
SPQR. And if you ask the right Roman, even in modern times, you are going to find that they tell you the Italian words. And I'm just going into the chat because I've got it on my phone. There we go.
So I mean, I'm probably butchering. You're probably now. If I butcher this Latin, it's I apologise. It's Senatus Populus Romanus. But I don't think I might be butchering the pronunciation of that. But
it doesn't matter if you are. Like most people who speak Latin will freely admit there's various ways of saying it. Yeah, Senatus Populus K Romanus. That's how I pronounce it, so it's not that far wrong. Or if it is, we're both wrong. And it's the Senate and people of Rome.
Yeah.
So take that as you will. But that's just my fangirling over history and Geoff allowing me to do that. So here we go.
Allowing you. This is your channel.
Yeah, but we are working together on this.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the background. He does a lot of work on the backgrounds, and most of them are pretty close to historically accurate, although I say that with a caveat. I'm going to point something out later when it comes to it.
Yeah.
So we have they're now being hunted down by the Romans, and here we are. The circus in the daytime again, nicely drawn. Can't argue with it. And here we go. This I like this. Halt, no, entry! Which is just kind of, it's one of those jokes that hands up.
So they're looking for Cacophonix now, and
yeah.
Again, he's so I'm trying to skip this on a little bit, and he's not there. Obelix, whilst he's in there, keeps on collecting Roman helmets again. He's still doing that. And
so we've got cell 18 is empty.
Yeah.
They moved him because he was singing.
Yeah. So all the time, right? This guy Collus Fatuus is trying to get hold of the Asterix and Obelix because he wants them to fight in the arena. So
yeah.
He's we lost Hissy. So where are we? Keep sending people into so he keeps sending thugs after the Bashdom, and then it's obviously doesn't go well. So So that this is just it just keeps going on, and these thugs try to beat, and then they run into another Roman patrol, and Obelix, of course, ends up with a few more helmets for his collection. So I'm just trying to move the thing on a little here.
Yeah. So here we go. Now we've got the Romans coming at them as well.
Yeah.
And 10,000 sesterti.
Yeah.
I never pronounce that. Too many S's in so many of these Latin words drives me mad. But again, you've just got half of Roma chasing them now. Now, this one, I wanted to stop here.
All right, yeah.
You can tell a Frenchman drew this. I'm going to give you a moment to just look at this.
L'Arc de Triomphe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right here for those paying attention.
Now, there is a triumphal arch in Rome, but I believe it's dated to Constantine's time, so...
There's two. There's the Arch of Septimus Severus, which is about 100 and odd AD.
Yeah.
And there's the Arch of Titus, again, definitely AD, I think.
Yeah, oh, right. And I know there was one for Constantine, wasn't there? There was a triumphal arch as well, didn't he? Am I getting that wrong?
It rings a bell. Again...
I'm going to Google it just to make sure I'm not...
Yeah.
Now I'm like...
Here we go. You get to watch us Googling for a minute.
So
you've got the Arch of Constantine, dedicated to Constantine the Great, which is 300 AD.
Yeah.
And is the closest one that looks anything like that, because it's got the three arches.
I'm just going to share it for a second, Hissy. So
cool, go for it.
Yeah, you to put that on screen in a sec. So this is the Arch of Constantine in Rome, which you can see it's a little bit like L'Arc de Triomphe, but when you look at it's like, again, very subtle gag in this particular thing. Very subtle gag in this, but you can tell it that is they've done the Arc de Triomphe there.
Yeah,
it's a bit kind of reminds me of that joke in Only Fools and Horses, at Marble Arch at Dawn.
Absolutely, yeah. Marble Arch at Dawn. And I like the Roman nose on the merman down here. Yes, very much so. This, if you want to see a fountain that looks anything like this in Rome, you're probably looking at the Bernini fountain at the top of the what's it called? The Via de Triton. Triton?
Oh, I know.
It says Triton in English, as in King Triton. And it's right at the top. There's a square at the top, and there's a fountain there that's very similar to this. It's a Bernini, so worth looking at, even if you don't want to see something similar to this.
That's
yes. These Roman anachronisms are crazy. Yes, because Bernini was a Renaissance sculptor.
Yeah, I'm going to say I've actually visited that fountain. It's quite spectacular.
Yeah, it's not the big one on the main plaza, but it's just a little square. You know you're in the right square, because if you look down the road, you can see the Santa Maria de Mota in the distance. Beautiful little square, nice little restaurant on there as well. Not being paid to show that, but their beer was nice, and so was their pizza. So off we go.
Sorry, I just seen rings go. Yeah.
I thought I'd just leave that there and see who noticed. So here we go, our first meeting with gladiators now. Or at least one gladiator.
A bit further on, aren't we?
Yeah. I do like this one.
Yeah.
The wanted poster amuses me for reasons. 10,000, and then just the description of them is quite hilarious. Big mustache, pigtails.
Yeah. This is going to get into. This is going to. We're going to when we do this next week. Actually, we're going to the wanted posters are going to be a feature in next week's book, and I'll just say Obelix isn't really particularly flattered by the way he's described. So
okay. So everyone's reading the wanted posters, and then take your sandals off if you want to come in the bath.
Yeah.
I do like the combination of sort of very modern jokes with the historical jokes. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's a nice bit of combination there. I think we've commented before, haven't we, that this series really is for everyone.
Yeah.
So again, we have something like a page where they want to be gladiators, and Fatuous thinks he's won the lottery.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's like, great, fine, yeah, fine. Which is what he's been trying to do all the time. Is get these two as gladiators. So he takes them for they have a bit of a lunch with him.
A light meal again.
Yeah.
Trigger warning coming up.
Yeah,
I should have taken notes.
In a page or two, just be careful.
Yeah, there's one as I'm going to scroll down. You're going to see it. It's not just the gladiator character who is seen here. There's also a maid in Fatuous's household who is not particularly flattered.
No.
To put it mildly. But again,
yeah,
of its time, and we had that discussion to start.
That's it. That's the maid there. That's the maid there. Now, to be fair, when it doesn't from probably what you see on the screen, it doesn't show up too much there. But if you zoom in on it, it's pretty. Again,
it's pretty graphically racist. You know,
yes, what we talked about earlier in the stream.
Yeah, no one's dressing their slave in gold earrings and armbands, and just not happening. But I'm going to scroll up so we can read this, because I am just going to let this stand and wait for the Monty Python jokes to come rolling in. Because that is definitely a precursor to the Colosseum scene in Monty Python.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, the Romans, most of those things were delicacies.
Yeah.
And that's why it's funny and why it stands up, and probably why they came up with the same joke. Makes me wonder if John Cleese read these stories.
I'm almost starting to wonder if it's because there's a few we picked up on this. There was or one of the Python team possibly has read some of the Asterix books, I think. So it does make me wonder, because we saw something that was very in the previous book, which was very similar to the Romans go home joke.
And then we have our.
This is how.
Again, and now we're in the training ground, and again with the racist depictions.
Yeah.
At this point, this entire section, just take this warning as read, because this goes for a while. And this character does appear in several different shots, although you can tell there have been some attempts to, I'm going to say, clean it up a little bit and make it look less animalistic.
But it still doesn't look. Yeah, still doesn't look great though.
So here we go.
So
Asterix. Obelix doesn't quite understand that your opponent isn't supposed to stand there and take a punch.
Yeah. But Asterix bops him straight away, and
it's all those baths you make me take.
Yeah.
Whoops. We are getting better with the technology, and eventually we'll find a way that works, but I'm just experimenting right now. So here we go. They've basically put the trainer to shame.
So he's sort of saying, I mean, yeah, but he's saying doing the thing with the trident, like the whole thing of this is like you're supposed to like capture your opponent in the net like a fish. So Obelix just bonks him on the head and puts the net over him.
Yeah, here we go. That's how I catch my fish.
Mm.
You could almost expect to see him whistling there with, do 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 do. Kind of, it's a nice, relaxed fishing expedition for him.
But this is just not this isn't turning out this isn't turning out quite how the way that they were expecting, obviously. And again, we've given the trigger warnings already, but there is a pretty awful panel coming up in a bit. So
yeah, it is coming up, and it is on the way. So they're all training, and then there is this. They start this game because they're bored.
Yeah.
Fairly childish game. You don't say yes, no, black or white in answering. And Obelix goes off to sulk.
Because he loses, which he normally don't happen when he loses. He goes off and sulks like a baby.
So, and here we go. Now the trainer is so wound up by them, he's decided to quit.
Yeah.
He's going to go back to his father's lace factory. Big guy like that spinning lace. That's wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You see what they've done here? They've moved the speech bubble on this side, to cover the face.
Yeah. But
then this one is quite.
That is.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I'm not particularly comfortable having that.
No, I think, but you
screen.
People get the point. No, people get the point.
Yeah. So, but they're playing a game, and everyone's winning and losing, and what have you. And then I can zoom back out now because we're past that. And here we go. So training, and hey, gladiators, you aren't allowed out of your quarters. Says who?
Yeah.
So this is. I mean, I still made these complaints when I went to London for the first time. It's too busy. It's too loud. It's too noisy. Everyone's in a hurry. And it is. That's what they're talking about here. They're not what I call friendly. If you've ever been on the London Underground, you know Londoners don't speak. It's creepy. Although, of course, if they came to Yorkshire, they'd probably think we were creepy for having a chat on the bus or whatever. It's that. I do like the way he plays off different kinds of people. So here we go. Now we have the Grand Circus Games.
I love the fact that we've got like a billing here, like like a fight poster or something,
So
Asterix, but first of all, the Gaulish bard thrown to the lions, and then
Yeah, so very much there. Don't let them escape now. Don't forget they're off taking a walk around Rome right now. This one here, again, this statue looks very similar to something at the Piazza del Popolo.
Yeah.
You see a lot of statues like this with the fish and what have you in Rome. Especially in the Renaissance, it was kind of the thing to copy the Roman and Greek style. Yeah. And the fish generally were how the ancients would depict dolphins.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from. And off we go. The poor guard responsible for the fixtures and Obelix just destroying the doors.
Yeah. This is like a recurring joke from last week, wasn't it? That the last few weeks, actually, the doors just getting bashed in by Obelix. You know.
And here we go again with the bad. Love is a menace. I love this one. This one amuses me so much because I actually know the song.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid of these miserable Romans, but it's nice to see you.
Yeah.
And the poor Roman sobbing away on his friend's shoulder there, which.
Well, I just thought they're gonna. We're just gonna leave you there. For a little. We're gonna leave you there for a little bit or whatever. Just part of the plan. We'll get you out, but just need you to buy put for a bit. But just one more thing is, can you just wait till we're gone before you start singing again? You see like Philistines, brutes, barbarians.
And again with the musical puns, Roman in the Gloman.
Yeah.
And now back on the streets of Rome.
Yeah.
A guide. That's what you told them you were. Again, I think they're supposed to be Egyptians here.
I believe they are, because there's a little pun or something. There is a little pun about one of the panels beneath it. I believe we're sort of saying, "Hey, how would you like it if I drew on the pyramids?"
Yeah, here we go. How would you like it if I came and started carving my name on your pyramids? Eh? Well,
but graffiti was a thing with the Romans, so you know.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you fancy a joke and you want to see how well certain things are just totally historically they never go away, check out the graffiti in Rome and Pompeii.
Yeah.
There's scratchings of gladiators on the side of the amphitheater in Pompeii. These ones I've seen personally, so I'll talk about them a lot. There's such and such has a big nose.
Yeah.
Directions to the nearest brothel, which woman in there does the best job, all those kind of things. And it's human beings. Humans don't change. No, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And of course, I will point out this is not an invitation to go to Rome or any other historic site and start graffitiing it. Please don't be like that spate of students in Rome last year. That was irritating. Please don't do that.
But I do love a little thing that's coming up in the next when we get to the amphitheater here, and it's see when we're coming up to the amphitheater in I think page or two.
Where are we at?
Where are we at? Where's Caesar?
Oh,
I think you've gone. That's it. That's the one.
This one.
Yeah. I do love something coming up here.
Yeah, I do. I just want to stop and point this out first. The market outside the outside of here. Wash your togas in super Persic. Super Persic washes even purpler. Togas weren't purple. There's only one person in the whole empire he should be selling
purple
to.
Is the imperial. That's a color of. It's still a color of royalty to this day.
Although not so strictly.
No.
A scorecard. I'm sure we've all been to the races, dogs or horses at some point, and picked up a scorecard.
Yeah.
Snacks, Chipotle, Kenner's Khalidi. Kenner's Khalidi.
But then you got everyone now. This like Julius Caesar's making his appearance, and everyone's like, "Hail, long live Caesar! Caesar forever!" Except one guy.
One fella, yeah.
I know, who's sitting there, and he's like, "Et tu, Brute?" And it's the fact that they actually have to put a little tag at the bottom that says "You too, Brutus."
Yeah, because that translates two ways. It can mean, it's all about the way it's said. And I mean, to be honest, if I was sat being made to cheer that guy, and he did pull something like that, I think I'd happily stick a knife in his back later on.
And then the next panel, you've got Caesar's thinking to himself, saying, "That Brutus, obviously I'm going to have trouble with him." And underneath, there's a little thing: an examination of Act 3, Scene 1 of Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare will indicate the prophetic nature of this remark.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. I do like that. Yeah, I like the little Shakespeare jokes. And I mean, you could tell they're having some fun with, like, you know, a lot of things that go on at modern sports events as well here.
This, I think, will be familiar to any American. Drink a jar of wine a day. You can almost sing it. And this creates a nice little joke later with one of the gladiators, which I enjoyed. But this, you know, it's your halftime show essentially, isn't it? It's your halftime adverts.
But
the public really like them, but they pay for the sand.
Yeah, which is actually kind of not. I mean, just a historical point that it was actually what they were sort of publicly funded, the Amplify, or even, you know, I mean, certainly when you get into the Imperial era, it was the Emperor was sort of expected to pay for entertainments and so on. So
yeah, it would have come out of taxes, but also a lot of the ranks to do with being a senator and some other roles in Rome, you were duty bound to put on certain entertainments and things out of your own pocket.
Yeah.
Which is why they were so highly respected, because if you could afford to take that job, you were, you know, you had a lot of money. And we're talking, you know, games could run into the millions to fund.
And
so if you think about the animals, the fighters, the staging.
I mean, you think about it especially you got a lot of people, like people who are a lot of rivals or whatever, or politically. You know, the games are, in a way, are almost a bit of a pissing competition between political rivals, in a sense. You know, they could be.
Definitely, yeah. So we've all heard stories about politicians in like the 1800s, you know, offering bribes for votes, kind of thing, buying votes. Very much that's what this was. If someone held something like this and then ran for election the following year, they would stand up and say, well, look at those amazing games I put on last year, and look how you all had fun for a week and you all ate well. You know, that was all my doing. Vote for me and you'll get more of the same, that kind of thing.
I mean, it's you know, the games were a good part. I mean, it's one of the few, I mean, there's a hell of a lot about that movie Gladiator that is wrong, but that is kind of one of the things that is kind of, you know, right. The fact that the games were put on for political purposes, but, you know, although from what I've read of the real Commodus, he wasn't nowhere nearly as astute as Joaquin Phoenix's character in that, but that could be another subject for another time.
It could, although it is the 20th anniversary of Gladiator around this month. So if you fancy it does hold up fairly well, actually, if you ignore the historical anachronisms.
Yeah.
And it's probably responsible for 20 years of people getting into this subject academically.
Yeah. Well, I think I pointed out to you the other day when you put something about Gladiator up, and I said the one thing that, I don't know what it is, it's one thing that really bothers me at the blooming start of that film and that battle with the Germans, and you can listen to the sound effects, and they've stolen it from the film Zulu, and you can tell this is Zulu chart. You haven't seen that film, you know, you've never seen that old film Zulu.
And just for the point as well, the Romans didn't do cavalry charges. That wasn't a thing that happened. Yes, Ring, you are entertained. Thank you.
Yeah.
So here we go, and again, because I know he appears somewhere in this bit of it.
We need to do it. We do anything on Gladiator, we've got to have Chris, Atheist Pastor, on there, because he's the Russell Crowe lookalike in the group.
Definitely. So the chariot driver's got himself drunk on a wine. He drank a jar of wine.
Yeah.
So maybe not the best wine being advertised
So,
out there.
so Asterix
Um,
and Obelix are going to do their Ben Hur thing here, I think.
yeah, a little bit of Ben-Hur going on, which is quite
Yeah.
amusing.
I'll ask you
Um,
a question about this. So, I mean,
yeah.
would chariot races and gladiatorial games be necessarily taking part at the same time in the same arena? I'm not so.
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Maybe not like fighting while the horses run round them or anything, because the chariot races were
Yeah.
violent and you
Oh, yeah.
needed the whole arena. But I don't see why not.
Mm.
Maybe as part of a
I mean,
wider program,
I, mean,
certainly.
I think possibly once the Colosseum was built or whatever, that which was more specifically designed towards gladiatorial games. And then obviously you see the layout of the Circus Maximus. You can see that that is very much sort of designed towards the chariot races.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot of the Circus Maximus standing in Rome today, but you can still sort of see in the outline. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I'll show a couple of. I'll try and share a couple of pictures in a second.
If you
Now that's kind of what it looks like today.
you can still make out the track if you
You make
go.
up the track, but if you look at a sort of more artist like a
Yeah.
rendition of this, it'd look a bit more like that. So you can
Yeah.
see what the Circus Maximus would have looked like, and get an idea from that. And I mean, and I think yeah, I think what was I going to say with that? I've got a feeling what I've read about Rome, the chariot racing was sort of seen as a bit of more of a sport of the masses rather than the gladiatorial.
Yeah.
Was seen as a little bit more upmarket, although
Yeah, so the
it would be the chariots was the sport of the plebs.
yeah, it was very much the football of its day.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it wasn't the rich. Although the rich did get involved, and there was always side betting and things going on. Very,
Yeah.
as with any sports game. And there were some quite famous riots over the chariot racing at one point.
Yeah, you had your equivalent of hooliganism at the time. And that went on right up into later periods of what would eventually become the Byzantine Empire. There's a very famous story of there was a riot in the Hippodrome in Constantinople, and just the Emperor Justinian actually had to send the troops in because the fans of rival teams started rioting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we have this, and it's actually drawn fairly well. We'll say the two outside horses on a 4-horse chariot race on a 4-horse chariot weren't necessarily strapped in as such. They were kind of attached to the inner horses.
Yeah.
And it was a show of skill that you could manage 4 horses, because those 2 horses on the side you had very little control over. And you were directing the chariot by leading the 2 middle horses. So it was very much a show of skill to do that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Asterix and Obelix kind of run everyone else off the track, as you can imagine. They're going to win this. So, at which point Cacophonix is put into the arena now with them, and we release the lions. But of course, the Cacophonix has got an answer for that.
So here we go. Yes, this answer of Cacophonix is quite amusing. Just because there's a discussion going on at the moment in the chat about cavalry charges and the comment I passed. It's not recommended for a cavalry charge against an unbroken infantry, because they will be a viable danger.
Especially depending on what formation they're in as well.
Yeah. So even with a phalanx, it would be suicide. But even with a fairly well disciplined or reasonably disciplined light infantry,
Yeah,
you wouldn't want to take the risk.
but it's I mean, very simple. I mean, if you think even going up into the sort of more Napoleonic or even American Civil War eras or whatever, you know, yeah, if your infantry was advancing in like thin lines or something, yeah, the cavalry are going to make mincemeat of them. But if they formed into like deep columns or squares or whatever, it was.
No, you have to flank them and take them from the other side. That's the only way.
It's also worth noting though, Romans generally would use like auxiliaries, which were people from outside, not necessarily Romans or whatever, as cavalry. It wasn't something that they put themselves were like particularly skilled at. So,
and a lot of it is as well with the Romans. You got your place in the cavalry in a lot of Roman time because you could afford a horse. The same horse you rode into battle was probably the same horse that pulled your plough the year before when you were harvesting. So, the idea that you're going to take a farm horse and train it to be willing to rush infantry, these horses have to be heavily trained. And especially in the early years of the Roman military, that's not happening. That's not a thing. Later on, it's quite possible, especially as the idea of a standing army and a professional army. But it's a major issue. I wouldn't want to run a horse at any group of soldiers who had even one spear between them, because that's not ending well.
Not at all.
And as Robert says, that the phalanx is highly vulnerable when flanked.
Yeah.
So if you're going to use cavalry against the phalanx, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
But flanking the phalanx is its own issue.
You'll probably notice if you look at most sort of like battle plans or whatever of any sort of battle from ancient times going right through up into like probably like the middle of the 19th century, the cavalry are generally on the flanks.
Yeah,
you'll notice
because that's the only safe place to have them. If you're interested in Roman military history, 2 YouTube channels I've been binging, not being paid to advertise them, but you're welcome to check them out. Invicta and Kings and Generals.
Yeah.
Are both very good for it.
I'll say I've watched both of those channels, and they are good channels if you're into that learning more about Roman military. So, but of course, so if we get back to story, there's a little weapon here that is unleashed on these poor lions, and unfortunately, most of the arena here. And that is Cacophonix starts singing.
Yeah. And off the lions run.
Yeah, and most of the crowd.
Yeah. I will sing, and I am going to make the most of it.
Yeah.
For God lang syne. And again, the musical puns just amuse me. Goodbye to the Forum, farewell Colosseum. Again, another anachronism, but yeah, we'll allow it. This one is brilliant. I came, I saw, and I couldn't believe my eyes.
Yeah. It's not up on the screen anymore, by the way, Hissy.
I'm not sure why. Oh, yeah. There we go.
Yeah. And, I think we could probably skip over the next panel, but because it's got another pretty nice...
Yeah.
And I don't think it's that particularly... I don't think there's anything particularly important in this one and that, but this one,
those about to die.
We salute you. That's do you want to do this one or shall I? Because I've got something I want to say about that, but
go first if you like.
My understanding is that there's only one documented time that this was actually ever said. I believe it was, you could correct me on this, I believe it's Suetonius wrote about this, and it was said to Emperor Claudius. But I think it's almost become like a meme or something, especially like any sort of Hollywood film or whatever. that and it becomes "Hail Caesar! For those of us about to die, we salute you." But
Yeah,
I think it probably is this one documented case of it maybe being said, and I don't think was something that was said at every games that we know of.
Yeah, and this document's problematic because it's supposedly done to take part in a mock naval battle.
Yeah.
Mock naval battles in the Colosseum or in the Circus Maximus would not have been anywhere near the kind of artistic renderings we get.
I'm gonna have to reread that. I heard it was that they did this one in the Tiber or something, or it wasn't staged in the amphitheater.
I mean, they do stage them in the Tiber. We've got record of that.
Yeah.
But there are people who like to think that they would have done them in the Colosseum and somehow managed to fill the Colosseum up with water to do it. There's not a lot of physical evidence for it. I'm not saying it didn't happen because a lot of physical evidence has been destroyed, but take it with a pinch of salt.
Yes.
At the time being. As with most things in history, we're relying a lot on textual sources, and the textual sources do not necessarily match what we've got in the ground.
So they're getting ready for the battle here. Asterix has a plan. Gets all to throw them, and they start playing this. Game we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and again, trigger warning for this because this character appears again.
Yeah.
So here we go. And they're playing this game again, and everyone's amused except for Caesar.
Yeah. Hi, Sandy. Just saw Sandy's in the chat. Yeah. So Caesar's not. So he's going to get his entertainment one way or another. So let's send in the legionaries at some point.
Mm-hmm. And here we go with the helmet routine.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen. Yeah, this is like to Asterix and Obelix sending the legionaries. It's like, oh, goody, and they're all gonna get knocked out. And
bish bash bosh.
The crowd has. I'm going to say the crowd has returned since Cacophonix's singing endeavors, and they're quite. They're all like, long live the goal. The crowd's entertained by the fact that Asterix and Obelix have just battered these Roman legionaries that have come into. So Caesar.
So yes, definitely.
Caesar's giving into the crowds as they would do, and giving them their freedom.
Yeah. Now there is one part of the Gladiator that was very well done. The way you win in the forum, in the circus, in the Colosseum, the way you win when you're in front of Caesar doing battle is by winning the crowd.
Yes,
that was very well done. And this is, even Caesar, before he thinks about it, goes straight for he bases his reactions on how the crowd are reacting.
Yeah. And I'm very glad as well. This is one thing I'm glad they didn't do the thumbs up, thumbs down thing. That's one thing I'm very glad they didn't do here. So it's something they've got right.
Yeah, just don't do it at all if you're going to get confused.
Yeah.
It's not the way you think it should be. And this, I do like the Asterix. Despite all the racism and the issues in this, Asterix does recognise that the slavery and the enslavement of the gladiators is not right. And he does ask as his boon from Caesar to have the gladiators released.
Yeah.
Which is a nice touch. Feels a little bit too little too late.
Yeah.
But you can see the heart's kind of in the right place with it. So I do have to give that a shout out.
So they'll be on their merry way back to. So they meet up with the same Phoenician merchant. Economic crisis.
Yeah.
um.
I do like, just before we get to there, one of the gladiators sits up and says, "Hey, didn't the house fall on me?"
Yeah.
That
That's
after his
it.
bonk on the head.
Yeah.
And again with the they're all free, but it's this one doing the work. So again with the
So they So they've also brought the Roman on from here of who owned the Gladiators. He's been brought with them, and he's going to get a little lesson in humility here, and
he's gonna
he's going to be forced to do some bloody work. Is what he's going to have to do.
What an Osman! Well, you would be too if Cacophonix threatened to sing, and you can actually tell. And this is why I love the artwork of this. You can actually tell where they're sailing from approximately. I would hazard a guess they're sailing out of Ostia.
Yeah.
It looks that's a very similar kind of. That's what you'd expect, and it is the nearest port to Rome.
Yeah.
So we might make him a partner, and this again is that Roman slavery is not race based.
Yeah.
We might make him a partner.
Yeah.
So the voyage is uneventful except for a few skirmishes with the pirates.
Yeah. These pirates, as like I said, they're going to be a little recurring thing in these books. But I think this is the first time they're introduced. So we get to our final page. He's got his lesson in humility, I suppose. They go back to the village. They go back to the village, and we enter our traditional scene. And Cacophonix, he's gone through all this thing of being kidnapped by the Romans and chap out up, only to his own. This is the feast for his own return. They're still tied him up to stop him bloody singing.
And you do have to love the irony that they rescued him and then decided to tie him up anyway. It's like, would you have been better off in Rome? So yeah, not just these Romans, but definitely these Gauls are a little bit nutty too. I think.
They are. But as we said earlier on,
this is why we love them.
This is more like it was just more like Cacophonix is a pain in the ass, but he's our pain in the ass, and he's one of us. That was all it was. That was more what it was about,
So yeah, he's an issue, but he's our issue.
Yeah.
I would say to whoever's talking about Total War in the comments, I can't say who it is. I've played it and it's not as historically accurate as you'd like it to be. So maybe don't rely on that for your military.
No,
it's great if you want to set yourself up and create recreations. You can have to work from the sources and not work on a frontal attack by the cavalry would be.
I wouldn't take video games of any sort, even if they are simulations, as particularly accurate on this. I mean, I used to own a game called Great Battles of Rome, and yeah, I liked very enjoyable, very good things, detail put into it. But some of the things when I'm having like cavalry smash the fuck out of the like Hannibal's Numidian cavalry, no,
that's not happening. Well, where's he gone? Whoopsie. I don't know what I just did there. He'll be back in a minute, I hope. While we're sorting that out, I don't know where he disappeared to. He is right. You can, and I will carry on the discussion about the cavalry. And nope, he's back. No need.
What happened there?
I don't know what happened there. Sorry, I think I pressed the wrong button.
I thought, if I annoyed you, I thought you kicked. I was worried because I've had a couple of internet issues recently, and I was like, "Oh God, not again, not now." But
No, it was me. Entirely my fault, that one. We all know what I'm like with technology. Um, but we can sit and
sum
discuss
up,
cavalry charges in the ancient world all day long.
yeah,
Cavalry charges don't tend to end well when they're full frontal and they're against phalanxes or any sort of infantry with
mm,
spears. Um,
yeah,
so yes, I made the comment cavalry charges weren't a thing, and by that I meant full frontal cavalry charges. So
yeah.
by all means, the discussion in the comments is welcome, but sometimes you do just have to
I think
stop
we.
and, you know.
I mean, I think obviously we let's sum up on this one. I mean, it was a good book. We've addressed the issues with it, and unfortunately, it is an issue with these books that we spent about 10 minutes at the start of this addressing, and but I just realised something because I think we've gone longer on this book than we have on any others. So there's an
Yeah.
awful lot in here. I suppose that there's. I think you and me being a sort of history interest in the history of the period at the time. It's probably why this one's gone so long as well. It's
Yeah,
gone very.
definitely.
Um,
Um, so now we've been through it all. There were a few things. Let's have a look. So, let's see. The circus scenes actually, there's a few things I found that I've took notes, so I'll quickly go through. If you look at the circus scenes, they do parody Ben-Hur and Spartacus, the
yeah,
movies from around the same era.
yeah,
And there's one where is it? Where did I put the? I do like that. Asterix and Obelix knew they weren't gonna die, so they defaulted to a nice friendly "Hi, Julius," which was fun. And yes, I did point out the life of Brian.
yeah,
Yeah, the pirates and their I put the pirates and their continual sinking feeling anytime they
yeah,
get near the Gauls.
yeah. And
Um,
as I said, that's going to be a recur. That's a recur. They pop up from time to time in this series, and it generally ends up with them like floating on a barrel with their heads bashed in and minus one ship.
yeah. So that is what we're talking about. We did have a bit of an aside on Gladiator as well.
Mm.
I'm just going to respond to this. Yes, Robert, you might not have been talking about a frontal attack, but I was talking about the frontal attack in the
Yeah,
Gladiator movie.
yeah,
So that's what I meant by you wouldn't do a charge like that.
yeah.
Um,
We could do a whole nother of a stream on like military tactics of ancient Rome or something, but it would be a
we
whole
could.
stream in
It would
itself.
have to be a whole stream, yeah.
Yeah,
So this was, I mean, this was fun. I enjoyed it. It's nice to have a story that's equal parts history and just general humor.
yeah,
Um, it had its issues.
mm,
The issues for me probably made it less enjoyable than I had hoped it
yeah.
would be. And I know Geoff felt incredibly uncomfortable with some of them when you were looking at them because you
Mm.
mentioned.
Yeah, and as I said, I read a lot of these as a kid or whatever, and perhaps because when we started doing this, when I started looking back on these, I might have been looking back through rose tinted glasses a bit, and then you suddenly sort of realization of these. Like, actually, there is some fucking problems with this stuff as well. It's enjoyable as it is, and as funny as it is. There's still some real issues with these that we can't be ignored. And I think we did our bit to cover that at the beginning of that stream. And I think if these things do pop up again, we'll just refer people back to the opening 10 minutes of this stream, because we don't need to go through it every single time we cover it, but
No, we
will. But we will refer people back to the fact that we have covered this and the issues with this, and we're not ignoring them in future streams. So,
yeah, Ring. I would love to get you, Scummer, and if he was up for it, Atheist Pastor in a stream to discuss the Gladiator movie. That could be fun.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure you'll do it on Media Musings and drag us all in at some point anyway.
Yeah.
And speaking of
which, there's a good segue there.
Yeah, nice little segue there. Star Wars, the prequels over on Ring's channel, and we're wrapping up now, so he'll probably start at the top of the clock, I expect.
From the Gallic Wars to the Star Wars now.
Yeah, so Gallic Wars to Star Wars, and off you go that way. Ring is here, so you don't have to tell him why he sent you. He knows.
Yeah.
But do check that out, and we will be here next week with Asterix and the
Banquet, which will probably be on my channel. So we're taking in turns with these, but I have started a playlist of these streams now. So on my channel. So we are enjoying doing them. So we'll go through Asterix and the Banquet. I'm looking forward to, because as a kid it was a particular favourite. Now, if I'm going to still get the same kick out of it I did when I was a kid, I don't know. We're going to find out next week.
So tune in to find out how that goes. It'll be my first time reading it because I've not read that one yet. That's gonna go there. Definitely, these stories do bring up a lot to discuss. We've got ideas for at least 2 streams, one on military strategy and one on the Gladiator so far. So I hope someone's taking notes. And I'm sure we'll get round to them all eventually. It's not like we don't have the time right now.
Yeah.
But when we're ready, all the best to everyone from me. As always, take care, be good, and if you can't be good, be careful. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe to both me and to Geoff. And we will, all being well, see you soon.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you over on Ring's channel very shortly. So,
bye.
All right.